Jadulapa, Namaste. Hello, I'm Sheelasha Rajbhandari. I'm co-curator of Kathmandu Triennale 2077. I'm here in Nepal Art Council with our artist Karan Shrestha. Hello, Karan.
Hello, Sheelasha.
Hey.
Hi.
So, can you just share a little bit more about yourself and your practice you've been doing past years?
Yes. I work with different mediums: drawing, photography, film, video, sculpture, text, and I like to bring together these different mediums so that they have different perspectives. And these different perspectives can provide different approaches to a work, so that I can escape the burden of a single meaning when we talk about something, because there's always there's so much complexities when we talk about whether it's about waiting or identity or nationality, and so my focus on for the past years has been primarily on what it means to be a Nepali in the 21st century, given the People's War and all the other turmoil that has been there politically, economically, and geographically, environmentally as well. And so the works address these aspects. Yeah.
And you have been creating different bodies of work which address these complexities. And in Triennale, we are showing your work from the series Waiting.
Yeah.
We have videos, textiles, and photo series as well. How did you started it?
The photographic series was done 10 years back, between 2011 and 2012. It began as a photographic record of a time that we were living through. Right, there was no electricity, load shedding. There was shortage of gas, fuel, water, and after the signing of the peace accord, they said that the new constitution will be promulgated, and people were just waiting. It had been 5 years, and there was just constantly governments and parties changing, and constantly bans being enforced, and the country and Kathmandu just coming to a halt. And it was a time of impasse, and I think all the promises of a revolution, which people were really ecstatic about. Nepal is one of the few countries to have elected a communist government into power, and all of their promises suddenly seem to have dissipated, and there was a lot of apathy on the streets, and so I started this as a photographic record. It was just something I did in response to what I was seeing out on the streets. It was very intuitive, but as I started making the work, I began to realize the complexity of the act of waiting, and what time really is, and to whom. Because depending how you are positioned economically, socially, geographically, time is either an affordance or something that we abide by, and the social hierarchies are somehow contained into how we respond to time. And so over the years, I kept working on the act of waiting, and in different aspects of it started being revealed. And so it started off with Waiting for Nepal, and then also 2 years down the line, there's this 38-minute video called Meanwhile, which was shot on a footbridge in Gongobu, which is no more now. And most of the people coming from outside Kathmandu would live in Gongobu, because it has a lot of places that provide temporary shelter. And these were people waiting for visas, not knowing when they would get it, or daily wage workers, and people wanting to go abroad for work, and days would just go by and they would just be waiting. And so I went to the place a couple of times before I actually recorded it, and I spoke to a lot of people on the footbridge waiting, and so that video came about, and I moved on to make works on paper, in trying to revisit archives, and so when I revisited archive, I kind of moved away from an image, lens-based image, because historically lens-based images have always been used to categorize and classify people, and to somehow how to reactivate an archive without withdrawing the image that actually exists. So a lot of the other works are then became text-based or thread-based, and poetry, and the work on waiting somehow has over the years manifested in different aspects, whether we and it's there whether we talk about employment or education or healthcare or whatever it is. It's at the forefront in what the people, the common person, experiences in Nepal. And for me, it also reaches other aspects of my work, whether I'm talking about the national park, where so many of the children are stateless, whether we talk about the law and who the law is for and who gets to access it, what is actually written and how it is implemented. And so there are these various facets that have the act of waiting at the center of it. Yeah.
You know, like when you were talking about people then moving to the capital, and then from the capital they were in conversation and with the agency and trying to move out of the country as well. And then while in the process they are waiting for their passports to get visas, to
work
get
permits,
jobs,
yes.
work permits. But also, like, I was thinking, like, through the lens, through the elite lens, and through the people who are living in Kathmandu, there was a lot of discussion also about how Kathmandu was getting crowded, how it's getting more polluted, and then it also, these sort of statement also comes from a very privileged point of view, and an act of waiting is actually the kind of narrating you are trying to weave is an act of like a desperation. It's not something people do out of choice. Because people have no option than to wait. But when I reflect back to those times, it was almost seen like a leisurely activity that people are in Ratna Park just sitting over there, bathing on the sun or something, badam khadai baseko, or in the Gongobu area. Like, how do you define this sort of complexity of the classes? And the identity movement also, which was happening parallelly, and the people who were on the frontliners, who were in fact the most affected ones, and who were also fighting on the front lines.
Yeah, I mean, of course, people can complain about the rapid urbanity of Kathmandu and the valley. But it's also a place that has where all the power is concentrated, administrative power, economic power. I mean, there's only one international airport, which is in Kathmandu. All the organizations, labor organizations, visa offices, everything is concentrated within Kathmandu, and all the power is held here. All the largest amount of the police force is actually here to protect the capital as well. And in terms of identity, I mean, that's what is happening globally as well as in Nepal. The People's War was premised on the need for social reform, right? And for because we have on paper 36% of our population is indigenous, but they say that it's more than that, like almost 50%. And they've always, for the past centuries, living under a monarchy, but not much has changed with being declared a socially oriented federal democratic republic as well. There's still an ongoing struggle for the right to self-determination, and it's evident in the act of waiting that there are always the people who are waiting come from a certain echelon of society, and they are and the act of waiting of course can be read through leisure, but it is waiting which encapsulates aspiration, because you're waiting for something to happen in the sense that gives you an opportunity to be able to self-determine yourself, right? To be able to not have to wait. When we talk about bureaucracy, administration, we just get lost in it, and it's often that being that position that disadvantages you in society and through the economics of it. That and it's always the same people, it's the same communities, the same groups that are made to wait. It's even when we talk about justice, right? Like the People's War, like people that are still fighting for justice. It's still an ongoing thing, and it's been how many years right now since the war has come to an end, but it hasn't really gone anywhere. People are still missing. And again, even if you look at who are the people who are actually waiting, it's pretty evident of who they are really and where they come from. Yes, so that's what it is.
Yeah. And like you mentioned, like even though officially the war is declared over, for the people whose family member have disappeared, they're still waiting. For many people like who haven't found justice, they're still waiting for that justice. And it's an ongoing process.
Yes.
And in your work, it's also I mean, there are different age groups, but also you are focused on the youth group, and especially it almost seems like this. It is a global phenomena in a way also, but also like how these youths are placed in a position almost as if they are disposable.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, because remittance is one of the largest contributors to the Nepali economy, and what is actually being exported, which is labor, is people's bodies, right? And when we have like on a daily basis of 1 to 4 coffins coming back every day, and people have always been moving for work. People have been migrating, whether internally or like out of the country, but it also shows how our policies and how weak our position really is in terms of not being able to negotiate, or not being able to even confront the fact that there are so many deaths that are happening, and to let it just go by, because these lives are just made expendable. And then, so what does it mean to actually have to be in this post-revolution transition period, which has continued to drag on for so many years, and what does the new constitution that has been promulgated done for the people, because also nation states, the idea of it is very fixed in the 21st century, and but how does it accommodate all the other identities within it, the subcasts within it, and there's this constant rhetoric of progress and things getting better, and all these super large infrastructure projects, but it is for whom, the question, and what expense, because it's always at the expense of the livelihood of marginalized communities again and again and again. And there's just so much displacement all over Nepal that's happening over the years. So yeah, that is also something that I bring into the conversation, into the dialogue with waiting, because on one aspect there is the act of waiting and the complexities that are around it, but it's also how to bring history, because history informs the present, right? And how whether it's the archives or whether it is the rhetoric, how do they play a part in this aspect of waiting at large? Yeah.
I mean, so if we see the formation of countries here in the region as well, it's and around the world also, it's a very new construct, and the border which had been very fluid, is now becoming more and more and more concrete in a way. There's a line which didn't existed before, and now it's becoming more permanent every year. And the formation of nation also means that diversity is threat to the nation, and in the history also here in Nepal, like how kings like Mahendra like built the entire policy, and how Jangabahadur Rana made the civil code and like inserted indigenous community within that hierarchy of Hindu structure, and how Mahendra also built that one monolithic identity, erasing basically excluding all the diversity. But you also are interested in the conversation of the politics of formation of identity itself, and you're also a person who are not into again a fixated identity. And while we talk about the identity movement within the indigenous community, also sometimes it tend to go towards the similar narrative. And yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think when something is really fixed or rigid, it has a tendency to self-annihilate, and but it just keeps perpetuating because it's always designed whether for a small amount of people, whether it is for time, whether the pluralism of time is reduced and concentrated to serve a small group of people, whether it is identity, it is also reduced to a very fixed notion of what it is to be Nepali or anywhere else in the world, and again it serves a certain group of people, and it's I mean, most of our cultures have been premised on fluidity, on movement, and which is, there's the other aspect of it which is also a threat, is because when we are in conversation with this, we also can run the risk of putting our tradition in or our own identity in opposition to what they say is an identity, and that itself can also be a trap. When the idea of nationhood and what it is to be Nepali becomes very fixed. So in opposition to that, when we actually have a counter argument, we talk from our own individual identities or our community and group identities, and that can also run the risk of being a very fixed notion, because identity and tradition can also run the risk of becoming a trap if it does not allow room for a certain kind of evolution or movement. And so more and more these are the questions that occupy me as to what kind of imagination can we use to move forward from here, what kind of when we say the right to self-determination, what does it actually mean, and how do we move along those lines. And so a lot of the work on the second floor is to do with that, in terms of what we faced historically, and how it has come at this point of time in the post-revolution part of Nepal, where it is a federal democratic republic. And so there are also these other works on paper that talk about perspectives, because it's so easily translated into to progress, which can also be a hindrance to so many communities and livelihoods. Yeah.
It's been a pleasure talking with you, Karan, and we will continue our discussions beyond the platform of Triennale as well. And thank
Yes.
you for sharing your work with us here and our audience abroad.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sheelasha.